Morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to come to Manipal, and as Mr. Ravi mentioned in the first session, that the first cohort was 30 students, and it's great to see that number almost now in 100 plus kind of a professional kind of a, let's say, size. And let me tell you, it's not enough. With the demand exceeding rather the supply, there is always a deficit and paucity, and some of my industry colleagues are out here and they can very well vouch for this, that whenever we meet, the first conversation topic is how many profiles do you have which we can actually look and interview. And I'm sure in each of us, whosoever is hiring or looking at data science analytics professionals, we must have actually looked at, few thousand plus in our entire, I would say, span of few years in terms of looking at those profiles. A very interesting space. It's gone through a very fantastic journey, and my whole next 20 odd minutes would be more focused around the whole genres of analytics. In the last 15 years, it's gone through so much of transformation. On one side, it's good because ability to influence organizations in terms of impact, insights, recommendation is a large byproduct of analytics and data science. Second, with so much happening in terms of changes, in terms of the whole disruption, there is always an emergence of analytics and data science which is coming every few years, which is giving a more galloping advantage to the professionals existing and the ones like you who are aspiring to be data scientists. What I'll talk in next 20 minutes or so would be just this kind of a journey, that how the whole piece of analytics started, what journey, curves, hoops it went through, what's the impact it's given to the industries, and what's likely to happen, which is interesting. By the time you all will actually graduate from this program, you will see a different spin altogether. And I'm glad to hear that all the essential topical trends about artificial intelligence, data science, which is more about sophistication of analytics, has been captured in the content. And Dr. Ramesh and me were having sidebar conversation. The content is by far the most, I would say, potent and topical what you can actually absorb. So the onus is actually on you to kind of really absorb, get it more kind of, let's say, contextualized in terms of how industry is kind of looking at, and I'm sure the future is bright over there. I'll just start in terms of what I think let's go back maybe 10 or just a pullback in terms of a 10, 15 years kind of a journey. And this is where analytics started, and I'll just take a kind of analogy. What was at some point of time, as Mr. Ravi mentioned, MIS, which was the only source for a CXO to actually look and say how his enterprise is performing, got morphed into when ERP came into the picture. ERP was all about amalgamation of all functions coming together, one's inside, one consolidation, and there you go in terms of a consolidated report. Then came the whole barrage of what we say business intelligence data warehousing, MicroStrategy, Teradata, Tableau. These were the tools and technologies which gave one instance of what analytics will follow in the time to come. These were tools. You could extract, you could harmonize, you could massage data, but you can't derive insights. And that's where the whole aspect of analytics in terms of a evolution came up, which is right from what we say diagnostic to descriptive to predictive and now prescriptive. And there is a sea change which has happened after that, is what we say data sciences. And to kind of compound more, I would say, knowledge, we have artificial intelligence. Now, one of the examples Mr. Ravi gave about driverless caddy yesterday. Not many of you are aware that earnings call yesterday and the quarterly results were evaluated by a lot of analytics companies. I'll give you an example how they were evaluating. The whole messaging, the whole script and narrative of earnings call was actually being used in terms of looking how the sentiments on the social media about the results are evolving. Second, Mr. Sikka was evaluated in terms of an image analytics technique, how his facial experience gives what kind of a report he's trying to say and not to say. Text was also being analyzed. Any kind of, let's say, lumpiness in the throat is not a good sign. But the fact is, what anyone missed, or most of the people missed, is analysts were also looking at analytics, what CFO was looking over there. Because the story is not about CEO telling, the story about CFO actually, if the face is poker faced, there's something wrong. So that's the beauty of analytics actually in terms of a live example, and it's happening all across, all earning calls are actually being captured in terms of how analytics AI can actually influence what we say the veracity of what's happening. And true to the point, at some level, this is where the impact, insights, intelligence, and recommendations comes as an advantage for the organizations which are adopting analytics and AI. Now, this is where I'm just jumping few slides. While we had a classic set of what we say analytics in the first decade, what has changed in the last 5 years has been very revolutionary. This was the thing which brought a change to the whole aspect of analytics and data science, the digital evolution, the unstructured data. So much of data is getting aggregated from social media, social side of what we say businesses. 60 seconds is actually being transformed in terms of what analytics data science can do to capture this, what we say, unstructured form of data and turn it into results. This is the analogy what we use actually as part of what we say, how the whole, hindsight to foresight works in an analytics environment. What you see on the extreme left as a part of the mirror image is the hindsight, which is how the whole analytics journey started a few years back. And what has moved as part of the foresight, which is on the extreme right, is all about predictive analytics data science. Now, if you take this, what we say, analogy of a dashboard of a car, it gives enough, I would say, reflection how the whole, what we say, evolution of analytics and even classification of analytics happen in a normal enterprise. I'll give an example today. If any kind of, let's say, project or any kind of a work engagement needs to start on analytics, it's got 4 segments broadly. One is whole piece around data aggregation. This is where the data from multiple sources, supervised, unsupervised, comes together. You need professionals to kind of really start looking at how do you aggregate data. Because the classic case out here in terms of what you have proprietary inbuilt from the organization is fine, but what makes an impact is how unsupervised, unstructured data from multiple social angle needs to be captured. The second classification, very important, is what we say data mediation. This is about the whole harmonization, massaging, kind of really looking at how do you really look at making some sense of a data where it can go into the next classification. Many of the professionals always believe that, look, data aggregation, data kind of massaging, mediations is not something which is to be kind of adopted. But let me tell you, if the foundations are not strong in these 2 classifications, you can never make a solid algorithm. And that's the third classification, which is algorithm making. Now, this is where the harmonized, structured data into the sets goes into what we say putting the variables and churning using a tool and technology. End output is what we say a visualization, which is in a form of a report or a KPI metrics back for a CXO. All these 4 classification and segmentation in analytics and data science is crucial because the journey is not just making algorithm. The journey is all about what we say, what goes into the data comes out into a robust algorithm. And maybe this is not relevant anymore with the advent of driverless car. This slide may get changed in the very near future. This is another way to kind of, or rather a rendition to look at what analytics genres have been all about. I mean, as I just alluded in the initial narrative, it's all about what it started with a very diagnostic kind of a look in terms of, okay, let's start doing the what and how part of analytics to a stage. Organization in the prescriptive analytics mode are actually getting determined in terms of what CXOs are now thinking is all being determined by what analytics robustness they have in the organization. Another example out here is some of these companies, and we'll mention in the subsequent slides. Mr. Ravi also mentioned Netflix, Ola, Uber, Facebook, Alibaba. Look at these organizations, Pandora. All these organizations are running their businesses on algorithms, nothing else. Any change, any kind of a distortedness in the algorithms, and you have a challenge of Mr. Trump coming to power. And that's what has happened actually in terms of all these things. I think there is another revolution which is happening. Now, we talked about data. Digital is another revolution which will actually accentuate how data can actually start influencing not only the organizations but the economies as well. Some of these examples have been that today we are talking about digital in a very different mode altogether. And if in this particular conference room I ask what's digital, we'll have multiple definitions. It could be as naive as a digital Casio watch, or it could be as evolved as 3 segments where first aspect of digital is customer experience is getting reimagined. There has never been a very, I would say, heartening aspect for the customers that they've got variety today, they've got options, and everything is personalized for them. As Mr. Ravi also mentioned that this whole hyper-personalization about what product suits you becomes very crucial for the organizations to then start deciding what products they should launch for you only. The second aspect is what we say innovation in products and services, which is nothing but how digital is impacting the whole innovation piece over there. The third aspect, which is related to what we say business enterprises, is eventually it's all leading to a change in the strategic, business and operating models. Gone are the days when the corporate planning departments in the organization used to churn out 5-10 years of strat plan. Plans are being actually determined by algorithms on a real-time basis. There is no organization today which is insulated from analytics data science because eventually it's all about what we say augmenting their top line, looking at how we should mitigate any kind of a roughness in the bottom line, and also garnering and acquiring more customers. Where should I point out? There's one more facet I want to touch, and this is important as part of discussion over here, and especially for aspiring professionals. When you go through the program, there is also a very concerted effort to make you industry relevant. And the reason I'm also alluding out here is changes in the industries were not there a few years back. And it's all happening with the advent of digital. And the reason I'm just trying to touch upon these things is the underpinning of the changes in the industry, the disruption and innovation happening in all these industries is nothing but the data sciences evolution. Because eventually, somewhere, the data is being captured, the algorithms are being kind of run on a real-time basis, and the impacts are being thrown back to the customers, organization, and CXO to make a meaning out of it. Some of these trends from a data science perspective, and I've just tried to capture in one particular slide, and what you see and what you will hear today is all because of these trends resonating within the organizations who are either adopting data sciences or even practicing data sciences. I mean, the pieces around There was a time I remember when we started our career in analytics, time series was considered the holy grail of analytics. You master time series and you are the god in analytics. Still relevant, but today deep learning is the new time series. And the evolution is not stopping out here. We are talking about artificial intelligence, automation, behavioral science coming up and say, look, the behaviors of human is usually irrational because a lot of decision making happens through gut, intuition. But how do you then replace this decision making with the help of algorithms and AI where any individual has a much more intellectual capability to take decision using data science, behavioral science and AI? That's something which is the revolution in the next couple of years will happen. And some of these subsequent slides I'll just try to cover in those particular aspects. And this is the whole sense. I mean, inherently, as you go through this program, please understand, don't expect data to do anything for you. It's dumb. You have to make that data speak the language what the customer or the client would like to hear, which is insights, recommendation, and intelligence. And there is a way over there, which I just narrated and alluded in my earlier discussion, because the more reliance on the data is because it's already available. There could be a cases tomorrow with more proliferation of machine learning, data will be captured automatically, algorithms will be running on a real-time basis, and recommendation insights will actually be an output every few seconds to the decision maker who would like to sit on the table and say, look, this is where is my daily P&L of the organization. And there are organizations today which are doing this thing in a big manner. Now this is important. As Mr. Ravi also mentioned, look at the whole aspect of what we say the power of algorithms. They're actually becoming the secret sauce and the nerve of the organizations. And eventually what's happening, there is a term which is being used today that organizations today are nothing but the math houses. The more is the intellectual, mathematically and computational ability of an organization, the more robustness an organization will enjoy in terms of the results. And it's directly linked actually. A lot of examples today are in front of us. A single player, a search engine like Baidu, which is a leader in search in China, they have 1,400 data sciences professionals in one facility. And it's tremendous in terms of the impact they make, because at some level, every aspect of that search engine is being looked by every data science professional in Baidu and saying, this is how the whole search, text and select should be managed for the larger population. And China by no means is a small country altogether. Now, this is where it's alluding to. Eventually, organizations will start becoming math houses. They eventually will have those discussions about algorithms, how organizations today look at P&L discussions. And the genesis of those discussions will be nothing but algorithms. Now, few things will happen, and this is happening sooner than what we even expected. One, there'll be something called what we say an algorithm economy, where millions of algorithms, just like we have a stock exchange, a telecom exchange, a metal exchange, millions of algorithms with a proprietary source code, IPable, with a very contextualized solving a business problem will get traded in a marketplace, which is what we say democratization of analytics. And very soon, with that particular piece happening, the marketplaces will start determining the true essence and the worth of an algorithm, that what problem that algorithm will solve for that organization, and what organization needs to pay to actually get that algorithm and start using in that particular sense or the context what they are looking for. That's a sea change. Now this is the future. I can tell you many of the organizations have started looking, and saying that algorithms will start deciding about economies as well. Niche, boutique, large organizations will actually start looking at what they say, making algorithms very, very IPable, very, very proprietary. And eventually, we are talking about CXOs looking at digital aspect, algorithms becoming the secret sauce for the organization. There is a fundamental aspect to this eventually, that what does algorithms do for the organizations? Now this one slide actually encapsulates everything when we say that if you look on the left, it's all about solving the business challenges. And this is more like when we talk today in the panel discussion also, the panel will also discuss, eventually the clients will come out with a business challenge. This is what they would like to solve. The enablers on the right side, what you see, are something which you are an expert in. If clients would have known how to use algorithms or derive algorithms, they would have done it by themselves. That's the dependency they have on the aspiring or even the existing professionals. But the result is more about what customer insights, what fraud mitigation, what kind of a supply chain analytics you can give to them, which helps them and accelerate their decision making. And this is where we say that eventually there'll be something called, and it's not exotic, a Mr. Algorithm in the boardrooms, sitting somewhere virtually or even as a physical, we don't know, maybe a chatbot, taking part in the meetings and saying this is what he or she can do as part of decision making. This is the power of algorithm, what we say eventually, which will start determining the future, the whole evolution of organizations, as we say in a digital era, will start happening very soon. And there are few win themes what all of us who are aspiring to actually excel in data science should be doing. One, there is a reality that democratization of analytics is already there. Analytics is invisible, pervasive, hidden, and something like what Intel uses with no ad kind of a thing mentioned to them, but there is something called analytics inside. It's already embedded within the organization's functions. All one has to do is to pick up those streams of analytics and start exhibiting as part of insights within the organization. The second is, eventually, it's also getting into the client operating model, which is what I mentioned. And the last is, which is where we all come across, is they all have to ride on the data science and AI wave. That is the power where as we fraternity will enjoy, because if the data scientist, if the AI professional, analytics expert is not strong, everything out here will actually go fat. And I think that's where we say that if we talk about a go forward approach, this is the time to make those kind of decisions. I think you are in a very, very right place, right moment. And organizations at some level are getting benefited with these kind of programs getting launched. Thank you so much for your time.